ටයිල්ස් බාත්වෑ සහ උපාංග සඳහා 50% දක්වා විශේෂ වට්ටම්.
ඔබේ ලිමිට්ලස් ඩිජිටල් ලයිෆ් එකට හඳුන්වා දෙන අලුත්ම ඩයලොග් අල්ට්‍රා සැබෑම 5G බලය.
Tonight, on First at 9 this Wednesday the 15th of April 2026. Risk Watch. Global financial system remains resilient, but risks stay elevated and could escalate rapidly, warns IMF. Says Asia-Pacific emerging markets face higher levels of vulnerability. Global support. G24 leaders warn rising global risks could undermine fragile recoveries in developing countries. Call for stronger multilateral support for climate finance and sustainable development. Hopes of peace. Trump says Iran conflict is nearing an end with peace talks expected in coming days. Claims China will not supply arms to Iran, while President Xi denies ever planning an arms transfer. Lebanon and Israel hold first formal dialogue in over 3 decades, but remain far from a peace agreement. Awaiting extradition. Brother of notorious Underworld figure Karandeniya Sudda nabbed in India. CID team to be dispatched to facilitate extradition.
Get up to 30% discount on Arpico Spring and Firm mattresses. Available at Arpico Supercenter and Arpico Daily.
From Derana, this is Derana First at 9. Live from Studio 24 in Colombo.
Good evening, you're joining First at 9, brought to you by Sri Lanka's most trusted news source, Derana News Channel. I'm Tarindu Mahendra, joining you live with the latest in Sri Lanka and around the world. Another tradition of the Sinhala and Tamil New Year was observed today. At the auspicious time of 6:55 this morning, Sinhalese and Tamils across Sri Lanka engaged in the tradition of anointing oil. The state ceremony for the customary anointing of oil took place at Sri Maha Natha Devalaya of the Temple of the Sacred Tooth Relic in Kandy.
The auspicious time for the customary anointing of oil commenced at 6:55 this morning. This year's table of auspicious times called for the application of a mixture of neem leaf extract and oil while wearing green-coloured attire and facing the east with neem leaves above the head and colon leaves beneath the feet. The tradition of bathing after applying a mixture of oil and herbal extracts is rooted in the belief that it promotes physical health, mental clarity and longevity for the coming year. This year, the state ceremony for the traditional anointing of oil for the Sinhala and Tamil New Year took place at the Sri Mahanatha Devalaya of the Temple of the Sacred Tooth Relic in Kandy. The ceremony, conducted under the guidance of the chief prelates of the Askiri and Malwatu chapters, saw the participation of President Anuradha Dissanayake and Minister of Health and Mass Media Dr. Nalinda Jayatissa and other government representatives. Following the ceremony, the President called on the chief prelates of the Askiri and Malwatu chapters. Meanwhile, the customary anointing of oil was performed in temples across the island today. In the meantime, animals at the National Zoological Gardens in Dambulla were also anointed with oil. Concurrently, elephants at the Pinaval Elephant Orphanage were also anointed with oil for the new year. Former President Mahinda Rajapaksa took part in an oil anointing ceremony at the Sri Pushparama Rajama Vihara in Hambantota. An oil anointing ceremony organised by the Sarvajana Balaya was conducted at Sri Lanka Vidyalaya Mahapirivan in Maradana under the patronage of party leader parliamentarian Dalip Jayavira. Another ceremony for the anointing of oil organised by the Aruna newspaper was held at the Gorugama Purana Viharaya.
මේ අලුත් අවුරුද්දේ හරි සිරිතට නිදියන්න ආපිකෝ ස්ප්‍රින්ග් සහ ෆෝම් මැට්‍රස් මාදිලි රැසකින් දිවයින පුරා බලයලත් අලෙවි නියෝජිතයන්ගෙන්.
The Derana dialogue Rangiri Damburu Surya Mangalya brought the festive spirit of the Sinhala and Tamil New Year to Dambulla today. The festivities are now drawing to a close with an outdoor concert featuring performances by Derana Dream Stars.
Derana Media Network's Derana Dialogue Rangiri Damulu Surya Mangalya commenced this morning at the Gammudava grounds in Dambulla. The festival saw the participation of Matale District National People's Power Parliamentarian Sunil Biyanvila, Matale District Secretary Prasanna Madanayaka and Laksiri Wickremage, Deputy Chairman of the Derana Media Network.
මේක සිංහල දෙමළ අලුත් අවුරුද්ද. හැබැයි සංවිධාන කටයුතු කරන ආයතන සමත් වෙලා තියෙනවා. සිංහල දෙමළ මුස්ලිම් සහෝදරත්වය මෙතෙන්ට එකතු කරන්. අපේ රටේ මේ වෙලාවේ ඉල්ලන සංස්කෘතියට අදාළව වැඩ කරන්න සමත් වෙලා තියෙනවා සංවිධායක මණ්ඩලය.
එලේ මහා සංස්කෘතියේ මහා මංගල්‍ය. අපේ සිංහල දෙමළ අලුත් අවුරුද්ද කියන්නේ අපේ දේ රැකගෙන අලුත් දේ අරගෙන එන දෙරණ අසකරට වරක් අපි ජනතාවත් එක්ක මේ මහා මංගල්‍ය සමරනවා. මේ අවස්ථාවේ අපි ඇවිල්ලා දඹුල්ල පුරවරයට දසදහස් ගණනක් මෙතෙන්ට එක්රැස් වෙනවාද? ඒ වගේ දහස් ගුණකින් පිරිසක් ටෙලිවිෂනය තුලින් මේ නරඹනවා.
The event featured men's and women's marathons and cycling. The festival also saw 4 games and other competitive events incorporating modern technologies, with winners being handsomely rewarded.
කොඩිය ගන්නවා අපි ඒ පැත්තට දෙමු අවධානය අත්වල සන්නා එකයි
The festivals will conclude with the crowning of the Derana Rangiri Dambulu Aurud Kumariya and an outdoor concert featuring performances from Derana Dream Stars. The concert will be broadcast live on TV Derana from 10:30 p.m.
දිවයිනේ ප්‍රථමයෙන් අටක් දායද කළ සන්නාමය බණ්ඩාර තිසානායක ඉකෝන් BS මුළු දිවයිනටම online.
Special transport programs have been implemented to meet increased passenger demand during the post-New Year holidays. Meanwhile, the Sri Lanka Transport Board announces that it has generated over 1 billion rupees in revenue during the 6-day period from April 8th to 13th.
As the Sinhala and Tamil New Year holidays conclude, a steady stream of people are making their way back to Colombo from their hometowns. The National Transport Commission has introduced a plan to deploy buses to cater to passenger demand.
A special transport system has been arranged from today until the 20th of April to meet increased passenger demand during the post-New Year holiday period. If the demand continues beyond the 20th, transport services may be extended to facilitate travel to Colombo and other suburban areas.
However, the Lanka Private Bus Owners Association notes that their buses will operating at 50% of capacity tomorrow in view of the lack of passengers.
At least 7,000 buses, including long-distance journeys, will be deployed tomorrow. However, the schedule will return to normalcy by Friday.
Meanwhile, the Department of Railways confirms that commuter trains will operate tomorrow per the usual schedule.
The train Sagarika, which departs from Beliatta, will continue as usual on the 16th and 17th. The train will resume journeys at 8:20 a.m. on the 18th and 20th. The trains Ruhunukumari and Galukumari will depart as usual from Matara. Similarly, trains will operate from Galle to Colombo Fort with departures scheduled for 3:15, 4, 4:10, 5 and 5:15 am. Commuter trains will operate from today from Mahava, Ganewatta, Rambukkana, Kurunagala and Polgahawela. 2 train journeys from Chilau, 3 from Avissawella and 1 from Koskama will remain operational tomorrow morning.
In the meantime, passengers who arrived at the Makumra Multimodal Centre were inconvenienced due to lack of buses heading out of Colombo. Against this backdrop, the Sri Lanka Transport Board has generated 1 billion rupees in revenue during the 6-day period from April 8th to April 13th.
A revenue of 163 million rupees was generated on the 8th of April alone. This figure was surpassed on the following day, on which a revenue of 173 million rupees was generated. 193 million rupees were collected on the 10th of April alone. On the 11th, when we provided transport for the highest number of people, a significant revenue of 213 million rupees was generated. The revenue generated on the 12th amounts to 198 million rupees, while on the 13th only 140 million rupees were collected. We have generated a revenue of over 1 billion rupees within 6 days. Welcome back to First at 9. Brother of notorious criminal figure Karandeniya Sudda, identified as Raju, a criminal wanted by police in connection with over 15 murders, has been arrested by security forces in India. A special team from the Criminal Investigation Department is expected to depart for India to facilitate the suspect's extradition.
Charges have been filed against Sobanahandi Jayalatri Silva alias Karandeniya Sudda and his brother Sobanahandi Sanatri Silva alias Raju in connection with recent killings reported across the southern province. Although Karandeniya Sudda is identified as the leader of the duo, police investigations reveal that all contract killings were allegedly executed under the direction of Raju. According to police, Raju had previously served in the Police Special Task Force and later joined the Army Special Forces Regiment before deserting and engaging in criminal activities. He is currently wanted in connection with over 15 murders, including the killings of a well-known doctor in Karandeniya and Police Inspector Balendra Singha. Authorities had earlier secured an Interpol red notice against him. Investigations further uncovered that he had fled the country several years ago with his brother using a forged passport and had been residing in Dubai. In a recent development, Sri Lankan security agencies received intelligence indicating that Raju had arrived in India and was attempting to secure a visa to flee to a European country. Upon being alerted, Indian security forces apprehended the suspect on Monday and have officially confirmed the arrest to Sri Lankan authorities. Accordingly, a team from the Criminal Investigation Department is expected to depart for India either tonight or tomorrow to facilitate his extradition to Sri Lanka. Meanwhile, the Galle District Crime Division has arrested a suspect identified as Nuandanushka, who is believed to have transported firearms for Karandeniya Sudda. A pistol was recovered during the arrest. Preliminary investigations indicate that the suspect had supplied firearms for several killings, which occurred in the southern province recently, and received a payment of 25,000 rupees on at least one occasion. Further investigations are being carried out under the supervision of Senior DIG in charge of the southern province, Kitsiri Jayalat, with operational oversight by Assistant Superintendent of Police, Namal Pereira, and under the direction of A. Pushpakumaram, the DIG in charge of the Galle district.
The Frontline Socialist Party's Duminda Nagamua claims that the government has moved to release water from the Victoria Reservoir for electricity generation in excess of ordinary levels in order to address the emerging energy crisis. Speaking at a press briefing in Colombo today, he stated that as a result of the move, local residents are facing a drinking water shortage. According to current developments, the government that came to end the curse of the last 76 years is now performing even worse. 2 ministers were in attendance at a meeting held at the Ministry of Agriculture, Livestock, Land and Irrigation on March 26, 2026. Minister Lal Kanta and Minister of Energy Kumar Jaikodi. During that meeting, it has been decided to release water from the Victoria Reservoir beyond usual levels in order to mitigate the current energy crisis. As a result
result, the Balagolla water treatment plant has come to a complete halt. That is only one of the consequences. They are also planning to release additional water for electricity generation. This is a consequence of the coal-related issues created by the government itself. The Balagolla water treatment plant, which supplies water to around 17,000 connections in Balagolla, Kundasale and Digana, provides approximately 12,000 cubic meters of water per day. Due to the current situation, operations have been halted, are experiencing water shortages. These decisions have been made at a time when global warnings have been issued regarding complex El Niño and La Niña weather patterns. The Meteorological Department has forecast dry weather conditions in the coming period. At a time like this, releasing water from reservoirs without considering the agricultural needs of affected communities is deeply concerning. This appears to be a decision taken by the Energy Minister to protect himself.
When asked about the allegation, Engineer Nilantha Dhanapala, Director of the Water Management Secretariat at the Mahaweli Authority, rejected the claim. He stated that water from the Victoria Reservoir is being released for hydropower generation and agricultural use as usual. According to the director, the drop in water level and the subsequent drinking water shortage in the Balagolla area are caused by prevailing dry weather conditions.
Welcome back to First at 9. The International Monetary Fund, in its Global Financial Stability Report for April 2026, says the global financial system remains resilient for now, but emphasizes that risks are elevated and could intensify rapidly. Presenting the report yesterday, Tobias Adrian, Director of the IMF's Monetary and Capital Markets Department, said the threat is greater for emerging markets in the Asia-Pacific region, especially countries that are highly dependent on oil and food imports. Adrian called for stronger oversight of financial institutions and improved monitoring of risks in both the banking and non-banking sectors.
The financial markets are being challenged by the war in the Middle East. The financial system has been resilient so far. This Global Financial Stability Report highlights that channels of financial vulnerabilities could amplify turmoil under some circumstances. The conflict has alternated between escalation and de-escalation, generating bouts of volatility, but not the kind of sustained drawdowns that we have seen in previous times of liquidity stress. We also haven't seen the margin calls and forced deleveraging that has occurred a number of times in recent years. We also see the benefits of resilient banks, which remain well capitalized and liquid, so the banking system is not worried at this point, at this particular juncture. Now, having said all that, the resilience is not assured in all states of the world. Elevated public debt and private debt, rollover risk, as well as the bank sovereign nexus continue to make bond markets fragile, at least in some countries. And we particularly focus on the presence of leveraged investors in these markets. So as governments have issued more debt, a lot of non-banks have stepped in. Of course, we also spend quite a bit of time on emerging markets. There are additional risks in emerging markets. Quite a bit of the non-bank flows have dominated emerging market financing, and there can be subject to shifts in global risk appetite. So against this backdrop, it is very important for countries to safeguard financial stability by monitoring closely how vulnerabilities are evolving, taking macroprudential actions where necessary, having strong oversight of the banks and the non-banks, and of course being operationally ready to inject liquidity.
Which Asia-Pacific economies do you think are the most vulnerable to balance of payments or refinancing stress if the conditions worsen?
We see vulnerability, of course, particularly in countries that are dependent on oil imports and on food imports as well. So really, it's the most vulnerable countries are the ones that tend to be lower income countries. So there are some in Asia as well.
If you look at the across emerging emerging markets. Those emerging markets with better fiscal positions generally have more access to international markets and lower debt spreads. So this counsels us to continue to make improvement on that front in order to guard against sudden capital outflows and over-reliance on debt. I think it's fair to say that financial markets in Asia Pacific is generally very deep. And so far during this episode, we have not seen really acute stress in any of the financial market segments. There has been pronounced exchange rate movements, but those appear to be managed in an orderly fashion.
Meanwhile, G24 leaders addressed the media during the IMF World Bank spring meetings and warned that rising global risks, including geopolitical tensions, inflation and tighter financial conditions, could weaken fragile recoveries in developing countries such as Sri Lanka. They urged stronger multilateral support for climate finance and sustainable development amid limited fiscal space.
Global economic conditions are deteriorating primarily due to disruptions in the supply chains, including energy markets, resulting from ongoing conflicts in the Middle East. All importing countries face increased current account pressures. Inflation may affect various sectors, undermining progress made recently, particularly on inflation. Rising interest rates and exchange rate vulnerability may escalate borrowing costs, intensifying debt vulnerabilities and complicating economic management for EMDs, emerging market and developing economies. In this context, multilateral support and enhanced development assistance remain essential for vulnerable countries.
Like Sri Lanka, there are other nations trying to grapple with the ongoing conflict in the Middle East and shield its people. What support is the G24 expecting from larger economies to assist smaller nations at this time?
Naturally, one would expect the strong to help the weak, and we have to remember that we are in a period where the developing countries, the emerging and developing economies, are facing a net outflow when you look at debt servicing and when you look at the diminished ODA, even FDI. The debt servicing in 2024 of the developing countries at about $163 billion outweighed overseas development assistance of about $47 billion, plus even foreign direct investment. The outflow from debt servicing because of the elevated interest costs that developing countries pay outweighed what came in. So whilst looking to see what can be done by the developed world, the multilateral development institutions should also step up to the plate at this time, as well as the usual thought leadership to help countries negotiate.
Yes, the multilateral organizations have come out with a wide range of policies on what they can do differently. The World Bank is supporting some of the development initiatives on energy, and the IMF is trying to review its programs and policies to make them more suitable to the needs of developing countries. There are also a wide range of discussions going on also with the World Bank in ways in which they can further support developing countries.
US President Donald Trump claims the ongoing conflict with Iran is very close to ending, adding that peace talks could resume in Pakistan within the next 2 days. Trump also claimed that China agreed to restrict arms supplies to Iran, but China maintains that it has never transferred weapons to the Middle Eastern nation. Meanwhile, Israel and Lebanon held their first formal talks in over 3 decades, but the discussion in Washington, D.C. did not see the two embattled nations come any closer to peace.
US President Donald Trump ordered sweeping measures to restrict maritime movement through the Strait of Hormuz following the collapse of negotiations aimed at ending the Middle East conflict. With that, the US Central Command announced that steps have been taken to curb Iran's maritime economic activities, effectively initiating a naval blockade in the region. International media reports indicate a significant presence of US warships patrolling the strategic waterway. In response, Iran has issued a strong warning, stating that any armed vessel entering the Strait of Hormuz would be viewed as a violation of the ceasefire and trigger a severe response. Despite heightened tensions and restrictions on the first day of the blockade yesterday, 8 vessels reportedly navigated through the strait. Among them were 3 ships carrying Iranian fuel. Additionally, 2 Iranian oil tankers attempting to move from Iran's Chabha port into the Gulf of Oman were reportedly turned back by US naval forces. Amid these developments, the Indian-flagged vessels Jack Vikram Makram carrying 20,400 metric tons of LP gas successfully transited the Strait of Hormuz and continued its journey towards India. President Trump has stated that the ongoing conflict with Iran could be nearing its end, expressing optimism in an interview with Fox News.
I had to divert, because if I didn't do that, right now you would have Iran with a nuclear weapon. And if they had a nuclear weapon, you would be calling everybody over there, sir. And you don't want to do that.
Well, you keep saying was. Is this war over?
I think it's close to over, yeah. I mean, I view it as very close to over. You know what? If I pulled up stakes right now, it would take them 20 years to rebuild that country. And we're not finished. We'll see what happens. I think they want to make a deal very badly.
He added that discussions aimed at permanently ending the war may take place in Pakistan within the next 2 days. In remarks to the New York Post, Trump emphasized the importance of remaining engaged in dialogue, noting that significant developments could occur in the coming days. UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres said there is a strong possibility that US-Iran negotiations could resume soon. At a separate event in Georgia, US Vice President J.D. Vance said President Trump is working to create favorable conditions for the United States in any future talks with Iran. He acknowledged that while both sides are interested in reaching an agreement, deep mistrust remains. Vance, however, cautioned that the crisis cannot be resolved quickly, underscoring the complexity of the situation. Meanwhile, Iranian President Masoud Pezeshkian stated that Iran, like many other countries around the world, is facing significant challenges due to the escalating tensions in the Persian Gulf.
ما دنبال نارامی هستیم میفهمیم که نباید بجنگیم برای اینکه مملکتمون باید درست بشه اما میفهمیم اگر حمله کردن به ما با قدرت بیسیم و در مقابلشون سرخم نکنیم.
Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov has emphasized that Russia will support any decision taken by Iran regarding its uranium program, underscoring that such matters remain the sovereign choice of Tehran. He further stated that Iran, like any other nation, has the right to utilize uranium for peaceful purposes, a position Russia has constantly maintained in discussions surrounding Iran's nuclear activities. Meanwhile, tensions continue to escalate between US President Donald Trump and Pope Leo XIV following a recent exchange of remarks. The Pope, who condemned the US-Israeli war on Iran, indicated in his latest statement that he does not wish to engage in a public dispute with the US President. Responding via Truth Social, President Trump asserted that the Pope should be made aware of the situation in Iran, claiming that at least 42,000 unarmed civilians have been killed there over the past 2 months. In other developments in the Middle East, the conflict between Israel and Lebanese militant group Hezbollah shows no signs of ending as hostilities continue across the border. Israeli forces have carried out further strikes in Lebanon, with damage reported in the southern city of Tyre as well as to a hospital. Clashes have also been reported in areas along the shared border. Since the conflict began on March 2nd, more than 2,000 people have reportedly been killed in Lebanon, while over 1 million others have been displaced. Meanwhile, attacks attributed to Hezbollah have resulted in the deaths of more than 14 Israelis. Amid the escalating crisis, the first diplomatic talks aimed at ending the conflict were held in Washington, D.C., facilitated by U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio. This marks the first formal dialogue between Israel and Lebanon in more than 3 decades. However, Israel entered the discussions without agreeing to consider a ceasefire. It remains unclear whether both sides reached any concrete agreement on a peace mechanism during the initial round of talks. Despite this, the U.S. State Department described the discussions as productive. In a statement, Israel's foreign minister said the issue of Hezbollah's disarmament will be a key topic in future negotiations. Global crude oil prices, which previously surpassed the $100 per barrel mark, have eased slightly following a recent diplomatic efforts to de-escalate the conflict in the Middle East. As of today, Brent crude was trading at around $95 per barrel, while West Texas Intermediate stood at approximately $91. Despite the decline, U.S. Energy Secretary Chris Wright warns that fuel prices are likely to remain elevated in the coming weeks, citing ongoing disruptions to shipping routes in the Strait of Hormuz. Meanwhile, Japanese Prime Minister Sanae Takaichi announced plans to establish a $10 billion financial support framework aimed at Southeast Asian nations struggling with surging crude oil prices amid tensions in the Middle East. The assistance will mainly take the form of loans aimed at helping countries secure crude oil supplies. Meanwhile, US President Donald Trump claimed that China agreed not to supply weapons to Iran, as reports circulate that Beijing has considered transferring arms. While Chinese President Xi Jinping reportedly rejected the allegations, US officials maintain that China has historically supported Iran's missile program with dual-use components. Meanwhile, over 238 Iranian naval personnel, including 32 sailors, rescued from the IRIS Dana and 206 crew members of IRIS Bushehr have departed Sri Lanka. Sri Lanka's Deputy Defence Minister Major General Arunajai Sekara said the special Turkish flight left for Iran last evening.
That's all for tonight from First at 9. Thank you for joining. Have a great night.